Hello and welcome everyone. It's truly a pleasure to share insights on topic that lies at the core of my passion, Biochar, and its impact on soil health and productivity. I'm Sharma and I'm the research director at Rural Institute Southeast Organic Center. It's located at Chattahoochee Hill in Georgia. So my journey has been revolving around sustainable agriculture practices, and today I'm very thrilled to talk about Biochar. So in this webinar, we'll try to explore relationship between biochar, between soil health, productivity, and we'll try to evaluate the ability of biochar in enhancing agriculture productivity, resilience, and its contribution to sustainable agriculture systems. So feel free to actively participate in this webinar by asking or typing your questions in the QA section, and I'll try to answer them at the very end. So without any further delay, let's jump into the world of biochar. So before we get into the depth of biochar, let's take a moment to get familiar with some key terminologies that will lay foundation for our discussion today. So the first one is cation exchange capacity. The cation exchange capacity tells you about the soil's ability to hold into important nutrients. So think this as a sponge. So this sponge can absorb and store nutrients. So if you have like higher cation exchange capacity, then you'll have more nutrients like calcium, magnesium, potassium. This soil can hold. And this is very important because it will affect how the soil can provide these different nutrients to the plant, and it will support plant growth and productivity. The next is porosity. So porosity is a measure of total pore space in this one, and we measure it in terms of volume or percentage. So the amount of these different pores or porosity will depend on the mineral composition of soil, how everything is well arranged. This is more like this building where you have different size of blocks. If you have like let's say sandy soil, you will have a lot of room for particles, and it will make the porosity higher. So the next term is bulk density. So bulk density is an indicator of compaction. So we calculate bulk density as the ratio of dry weight of soil and volume of soil. So it tells you about how tightly the soil is packed, or if the soil has some space or room for soil air, soil water. Aggregate stability. So aggregate stability is like how soil, water, or air moves around the soil, and think this more like soil teamwork between sand, silt, and clay particle. So the better these different particles stick with each other, the better the soil will work. So these soil aggregates are formed either naturally or by some organic substances like root exudates. So if you have like small aggregates, they will cement together into large macro aggregates. And these macro aggregates will give you structural stability. So when we're saying aggregate stability, we are talking about how soil macro aggregates will stay together when they're exposed to things like rainfall or erosion or tillage practices. Infiltration. The infiltration is a downward movement of water into soil profile. And if you are talking about the rate, then it's the velocity and its infiltration rate. So hydraulic conductivity is ability of soil to transmit water. Soil water holding capacity. So soil water holding capacity is sometimes referred to as water retention in literature. So it's the ability of soil to store water for plants. So when you have like more organic matter in the soil, it increases water holding capacity or retention capacity. And plant available water. Plant available water is the amount of water that is available for plant to use. And it's the difference between how much water soil can hold when it's full and when it's dry. So it's like difference between field capacity and permanent wilting point. So this difference refers to plant available water. So these are very important terminologies, and biochar has shown very promising effect on many of these soil properties. And by maintaining or improving these different properties, biochar can contribute to sustainable and resilient agriculture. So Uh, when we keep talking about biochar, just keep these terminologies in mind, and let's get it started. So let's begin with a picture that I found in a paper by Verhezin in 2010. So on this paper, in this picture, on the very left-hand side, you can see this not so rich oxysol, and in the center, you can see this Terra Petra soil. So this healthy Terra Petra soil was created by mixing charcoal into this not so rich nutrient-rich oxysol in the very left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, you can see this very fertile European soil of Netherlands, uh, which was made by adding peat and manure to naturally nutrient-poor soil. So you can look at this picture and feel like a magic. So you have very dry soil, very nutrient poor soil on the very left, and nutrient rich soil in the center by adding this stuff. And this is special stuff, we call it biochar, and this stuff makes soil very healthy, very nice for growing things. So this is very cool, right? Well, so let's talk about this stuff biochar. So what is biochar and how biochar is produced? So first, biochar is a carbon-rich material that is made from biomass through thermochemical conversion, which we call pyrolysis. And biochar is made by heating different materials like wood, manure, plant leftover like straw or hogs. And we use limited to no oxygen conditions. So this happens usually at temperature between 200 to 1250 degrees Celsius. It's more like cooking things in a very special way to make biochar. So depending on how hot it gets or how long it takes, this pyrolysis can happen in slow, intermediate, or fast fashion. So for example, let's talk about this fast pyrolysis. So in fast pyrolysis, this biomass is quickly heated to a temperature between 850 to 1250 degrees Celsius. And it happens very quickly within just a few seconds, 1 to 10 seconds. And heating rate ranges from 10 to 200 degrees Celsius. And different pyrolysis can produce biochar with different properties. For example, fast pyrolysis can produce biochar with less surface area. So here you can see different physical and chemical properties of biochar. Let's walk through some of these properties. First, let's talk about porosity. So during pyrolysis, these pores are formed, and there is devolatilization of gases from solid biomass, and it produces pores. Similar in carbonization process, the porosity and total surface area could change due to gas release. And residence time is the next one. The residence time of biomass is very important in biochar production. So it will not only affect how much biochar is produced, but it will also determine the properties and qualities of biochar. And it will also affect the formulation of both big pores and small pores. So when it's really hot, keeping things very longer will make more biochar. But when it's not so hot, keeping things longer will make less biochar. But literature do suggest that heating things up very slowly will avoid this thermal cracking of this biochar, and it will yield more biochar. And when you increase the temperature from 400 degrees Celsius to 700 degrees Celsius, some literature suggests that you will reduce biochar by almost 10%. So the amount of nitrogen in biochar will also drop from 39 to 8 milligram per kg when this temperature will go from 350 to 600 degrees Celsius. And also, biochar is very rich in carbon. This carbon is stable carbon, and this will depend on feedstock type, pyrolysis temperature, among other different factors. So let's look into the effect of feedstock and temperature on biochar properties. So you can see this total nitrogen will range from 0.2 to 3.2 percentage. Total carbon range from 41 to 90 percentage. Total phosphorus, you can see it ranges up to 8%. And then you have total potassium that ranges up to 17%, depending on feedstock and pyrolysis temperature. So this information do suggest that biochar can have different total nitrogen, total carbon, total phosphorus, potassium, or different nutrients depending upon feedstock, depending upon pyrolysis temperature. And the biochar can be used as a sustainable way to improve chemical properties of soil. So adding biochar to the soil improves soil physical characteristics, especially in nutrient depleted soil or integrated soil. So this is one extension article that Anderson and we wrote a couple of years ago in Nebraska. So here, biochar is more like giving soil a boost to make it more healthier, more productive. So this diagram tells that biochar will reduce bulk density, it will reduce compaction, uh, it will increase soil water retention, it will increase aggregate stability and infiltration. Similarly, it will improve pH, cation exchange capacity, and it will reduce respiration, it will promote beneficial microorganisms in soil, earthworm population. So basically biochar have positive influence on various soil properties for soil fertility and resilience. So what are the different factors that will affect biochar performance? So we have these climatic factors like precipitation and temperature. But apart from these climatic factors like precipitation and temperature, we have different other factors that will influence biochar, that will affect soil functions and services eventually. So these include soil properties, biochar characteristics, production condition, management of biochar, and overall management of crop and field management. So let's take a few examples here. So soil texture first. So we have seen a lot of pronounced effect of biochar in post texture soil than fine textured soil. And we discussed about pyrolysis temperature before. So biochar, which is derived from fast pyrolysis, has higher particle density and increased volatiles. And they have lower fixed carbon content compared to biochar from slow pyrolysis or gasification. So when you have like higher pyrolysis temperature, it may yield biochar with a greater surface area with greater pore space. And sometimes higher temperature will increase internal pore volume, but higher temperature can also cause thermal cracking of heavy hydrocarbons, and this will eventually reduce the yield of biochar. And biochar, which are produced in between 450 to 550 degrees Celsius, they are shown to increase soil structure because they have higher specific surface area, they have higher cation exchange capacity. But also note that when temperature increases beyond 550 degrees Celsius, it can reduce oxygen and it can also induce hydrophobicity in biochar or water repellency in biochar. So how does biochar affect different soil properties? So this is a review paper published in Soil Science Society of America by Dr. Blanco from Nebraska. So it suggests that there are different effects of biochar on soil physiochemical properties and hydrological properties. Let's look into a few properties. So bulk density. Bulk density is reduced by 3 to 31%. Particle density is decreased by 14 to 64%. Porosity increased by 2 to 41%. And biochar increases aggregate stability. For example, it can increase mean weight diameter of water stable aggregate by 4 to 58%, proportion of water stable aggregate by 21 to 226%. It will increase plant available water by 4 to 130%. And one important soil parameter is bulk density. So let's talk about bulk density. So biochar will decrease bulk density and it will increase porosity. So it decreases bulk density by different mechanism, and it has been seen that the decrease in bulk density is linearly correlated with increasing rate of biochar application. So if you put more biochar into soil, then it will decrease bulk density linearly in a linear fashion. So it occurs mainly by a couple of mechanisms. So the first one is dilution effect. So biochar has very low density than soil particles. So when you use biochar as an amendment, then they lead to dilution and subsequently it reduces bulk density of soil. And the second way by which it reduces bulk density is by increasing porosity. So biochar will increase porosity by either adding new pores or by increasing soil aggregation. And sometimes it will increase population of different invertebrates in soil, microorganisms like and earthworms. So these are a couple of mechanisms through which biochar can reduce bulk density and increase porosity in soil. So this is a study that our group conducted a few years ago. This was research done with Iowa State University, University of Nebraska, Lincoln. And here we looked into the effect of biochar 6 years after application. And in the very left-hand side, you can see this change in carbon concentration. So this change in carbon concentration was significantly higher in biochar amended soil than in non-biochar amended soil. And this was particularly seen in upper 30 centimeter of soil depth. And in the right-hand side, you can see that biochar carbon increased by almost twice the amount of biochar that was applied after 6 years. So this figure in right-hand side suggests the evidence of negative priming. So what is negative priming? So we all know that biochar will increase soil carbon. So this soil carbon increases through two different effects. So one is direct effect and another is indirect effect. So direct effect is when you add biochar, you are adding carbon into the soil. So this is your direct effect. And when we are talking about indirect effect, then it's negative priming, or you are reducing mineralization of some native soil organic matter or fresh crop residues. And this is what we call negative priming. So you have this negative priming and you have this positive priming, right? And positive priming will reduce carbon by accelerating decomposition of native organic matter, whereas this negative priming will conserve carbon. And in the right hand side, you can see that biochar significantly changed soil carbon stocks. After 6 years of biochar application, soil carbon stocks increased by almost 14 megagram per hectare in biochar amended plots. And soil carbon in non-biochar was almost like 2 megagram per hectare. So what does this tell you? So it means that biochar can decrease carbon mineralization or increase crop residues carbon stabilization. So you can see definitely some negative priming effect over there. So what is the effect of biochar into infiltration, soil water infiltration? So how biochar affects soil water infiltration? Studies do suggest some mixed effect on infiltration property. So in some cases, we are seeing increasing infiltration, and in some cases, we are seeing decreasing infiltration, whereas in some studies, we are seeing no effects of biochar amendment as well. So increasing infiltration occurs by reducing penetration resistance. So when you apply biochar in soil, this will reduce penetration resistance in soil. It will reduce surface crusting, and it will also promote soil aggregation and macroporosity. And all these different properties are very beneficial for improving infiltration. And these studies are mostly conducted in pots or in greenhouse conditions, but field studies are very limited. And biochar can decrease infiltration too. So they can clog soil pores and they can decrease infiltration. And in some cases, you will see negligible effect, but field studies are very limited. So we should um, consider taking some of these results carefully. Um, and So what is the effect of biochar in soil water retention? So let's look into some of these studies. So biochar in most of the cases, if you look throughout the globe, seems to increase soil water retention in mostly field studies, in lab studies. So basically, it will increase soil water retention. And this soil water retention increases through two different processes. One is increasing a specific surface area. So when you add biochar into the soil, this biochar will increase a specific surface area. And the other way that biochar increases soil water retention is through increasing soil porosity. So this has been observed in most of the soils, say sandy soil, sandy loam soil, clay loam soil. And there are a few studies which are suggesting no change or decrease in water retention, mostly in clay soils of Japan and Brazil at the very end of that table. And uh, the physical characteristic of this biochar is very important to control the soil water retention. So it's very important to know what type of material are you using to produce biochar, the pyrolysis condition in producing biochar, and then the management factor is also very important. So what depth are you applying, and what is the method of biochar application? Because if you have any mechanical disturbance, it can expose your biochar to the soil surface, and it can expose them to soil microorganisms and decompose biochar. and it can also reduce aggregation and porosity. So these all aggregation porosity are essential for water retention. So exposing them through mechanical disturbance will reduce the effect of biochar on soil water retention. So why do we care about the soil water retention? So the important thing is that the soil water retention is very important to reduce water stress and to decrease irrigation water requirement for plants. So this is one of the study that we recently published. So this research was done in South Korea. Here you can see the total bacterial counts in 2 different years. You have 2018 and 2017. So you have 2017 is dry year and 2018 is wet year. And we had 6 different treatment. We had C and control treatment. We have inorganic fertilizer. Then we have barley straw. Then we have corn waste biochar. Then we had corn waste biochar plus inorganic fertilizer. And then we have corn waste biochar and barley straw. 6 different treatment, 2 different year. One was dry year and one was wet year. And this bacterial population was generally higher under wet condition, as you can see in the right hand side. And in the year 2018, or the wet year, bacterial population was almost 30% higher than in the dry year, that is 2017. But there was no significant difference between the 6 treatment in the wet year. But if you look into the dry year, you can see some differences there. Generally, biochar increased bacterial population by almost 18 to 42% is there compared to no biochar application. So this is very important effect of biochar on total bacteria or soil microorganisms. Let's look into some greenhouse gas emission. This is a study that we did in South Korea again, and we had 3 different treatment. We have control, we have inorganic fertilizer, and we have these biochar pellets. So these biochar pellets were biochar that were made in pellet form from dry bamboo, and we looked into methane emission in rice. So generally, methane emission increased with flooding, and it peaked around 2 months after transplanting rice. And there was less methane during fallow season, and there was more methane during rice season. And if you look into biochar pellet, they decrease annual methane emission by almost 15 to 19%. So biochar could reduce methane emission by either absorbing this methane to the biochar surface, or due to this methanotropic organism which can consume methane at the interface of oxic or anoxic layer in soil. And sometimes biochar might increase soil pH, and this will reduce methane emission by reducing methanogens activity. So, what about this soil respiration? So, if you look into soil respiration, it's the same study that we talked before, dry year versus wet year. So, more carbon was emitted during wet year compared to dry year. So if you remember, we had more soil water, more bacterial population in wet year, that is 2018, which might have caused more emission. But one important thing that I want to add here is the age of biochar. So if you have, like, let's say young biochar versus old biochar, so you could expect more carbon dioxide emission from young or fresh biochar. And why is that? So one reason is because young biochars or fresh biochar have labile carbon. They are rich in labile carbon. So this carbon is very easily available to soil microorganism for energy source, for mineralization. Therefore, you can expect more carbon dioxide emission. And we talked about carbon dioxide. We talked about nitrous methane. So what about nitrous oxide emission? So there are studies that are showing more nitrous oxide emission and less nitrous oxide emission. So it can go both ways, but biochar can affect denitrifying bacteria, and depending upon different soil texture, different soil properties, it can affect nitrous oxide emission differently. But generally, biochar could reduce nitrous oxide emission by decreasing denitrification, and also by nitrogen immobilization. So those are beneficial effect in reducing emissions. So the ultimate question is, will biochar increase yield? Yes, biochar could increase yield by affecting these different soil properties that we talked before. So here is this review paper by Heather that was published in 2022, and he reviewed yield across the globe, and different crops. And in majority of crops, the biomass increase was observed across the globe. So biochar has potential to be used as soil amendment for improving, for maintaining or enhancing soil properties, for mitigating these different greenhouse gas emissions, and for increasing yield. But uh, let's look into one of these current meta-analysis uh, that was published recently, a couple of weeks ago. So here is a meta-analysis that was published in Current Research in Environmental Sustainability by China. And here they looked into long-term effect of biochar. So in long term, the crop yield will increase by 16% after biochar application. And the average increase in first and second year was like 10% and 14%. And if you go from third year to fifth year, then the increase was like 13 to 38%. And these are the results based on like 200 years of observation in meta-analysis. But this yield increase was varying across biochar application rate, across crop types. So application rate of 30 to 40 ton hectare, remember 30 to 40 ton hectare had the best yield increase effect. So at least you will need 30 to 40 ton per hectare to get this yield increase effect. That what this meta-analysis was suggesting. And corn and wheat had better effect than rice. And one of the reason why that could have happened is because in rice you will need flooding and drainage in rice. That's a common operation. So when you have like flooding and drainage, it will cause this fragmentation of biochar structure, and sometimes it will cause leaching of biochar. And this leaching and fragmentation of biochar particle could reduce beneficial effect of biochar. And this meta-analysis also suggested that this increase in yield was more correlated with soil organic carbon than pH and bulk density. So remember, the yield increase was positively correlated with soil organic carbon. So there are definitely some research gaps and challenges in biochar field, but these gaps and opportunities do provide us windows of opportunities. So we have a paper that was recently accepted about a couple of days ago in a biochar journal, and I'm taking some information from that paper. And here, some of the important points that I would like to bring are large-scale applications of biochar, cost of transportation of feedstock to different facilities, and different health concerns of biochar, issues like hydrophobicity, and effect on field capacity and wilting point. So let's discuss about these different gaps and challenges briefly. So large scale application, we don't know much about large scale application of biochar, and most of the information is available from surface soil layer or 0 to 30 centimeter depth, but not much about what would be the ramifications or consequences on deeper layer. Like let's say if you go below 30 centimeter depth in soil, what would be the effect? And during biochar production, there are different compounds that are produced. These different organic compounds, like phenolic compounds, like polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon, dioxins, which are really toxic in nature, and they could have different health impacts. So not much studies has been done towards that direction. And sometimes they could lead to leaching of these heavy metals. So nutrient leaching is another field that needs considerable attention and studies. And biochar could also induce hydrophobicity. So if you have like, let's say, polar functional group, it will reduce hydrophobicity. And if you have like alkyl functional group, it will cause hydrophobicity. So temperature, production temperature also causes hydrophobicity. So high temperature could reduce hydrophobic compound, but temperature around like 300 to 550 degrees Celsius could induce hydrophobicity. Sometimes you have fresh biochar, so freshly produced biochar, they are hydrophobic because they are losing this polar functional group. So sometimes if you have like higher cation exchange capacity, so this higher cation exchange capacity could be associated with hydrophobicity too. So what happens with this hydrophobicity is that it will have effect on infiltration of water. So more hydrophobicity means less water infiltrating into soil or more overland flow. Therefore, less soil water retention. So this will ultimately affect your soil yield. So these are all challenges and gaps that has not been studied much, and we need to really address these gaps and challenges through additional studies. With that, I would like to wrap up today's webinar on biochar. And I know we have very limited time and we can't touch each and everything, but I hope you found this information very beneficial, and I appreciate your participation. And I thank all the authors of different papers, reports, articles that I used in this presentation. And I would like to take a few questions from the QA section, and I'll try my best to answer them. But if you have like further inquiries, or if you like to discuss in more detail, please do not hesitate to reach out to me through email. And with that, I'll take one first question here. The first question was like, would there be any value added value to inject biochar or prescribed soil health constituent adjacent to or beneath the root zone from 30 centimeter to as deep as 150 centimeter by drilling? So the question is, can we inject biochar below 30 centimeter depth, and will that have value, especially for soil health? This is a really interesting question, and yes and no. Yes, because this is carbon which is less accessible to microorganism, which is less exposed to decomposition, and there will be also reduced chance of leaching of heavy metals, and also reduced chance of being metal contamination to different environmental factors like rain. And again, we have very limited data from deeper layers. So we did one study in Nebraska where we looked up to 60 centimeter depth, and uh, we didn't find any significant difference below 30 centimeter depth in terms of soil organic carbon and mean aggregate stability. So we don't know much about what happens below 150 centimeter or below 30 centimeter depth. Having said that, deep injection of biochar limits the soil chance of mixing this biochar with soil, and therefore these different beneficial effect on soil properties may be limited if the biochar is not well mixed with the soil. But again, we don't know much about what will be the effect um, of injection. So this is area that definitely needs studies. Really, this is an interesting question. Thank you. So here is a question from Max. I would love to know, when I purchase biochar, is the product ready to use in my soil to start reaping all the benefit, or does it need to be composted first? I have heard it can reduce nutrient ability and many positive benefits if not composted first. Excellent question. So this is really interesting question, and this has been an area of study for many researchers throughout the globe. So many studies do suggest that there might be some immediate effect on some certain soil properties, but not all soil properties. So to see this effect, beneficial effect on different soil properties, it will need certain time. So somewhere you can see these effects on soil properties after 2 years. Somewhere it needs a longer period of time. Beneficial effects are seen after 7 years, sometimes 10 years. Again, you need certain rate of biochar application. So this effect depend upon rate of application, timing of application, how is it applied, depend upon soil properties. And you can use biochar immediately after you purchase it. You don't need to compost it. um, Depends on the type of biochar you are using. So we get a biochar from different material, different sources. So it depends what biochar you are using. But if you are looking at benefits of biochar on nutrient availability, biochar does add a lot of nutrients into the soil, as we discussed before. And one of the most important benefit is it adds carbon into the soil, soil organic matter carbon into the soil, and that has positive effect on yield, on soil health, on crop productivity. Thanks, Mac. So does biochar need to be continually reapplied to soil to continue the benefit long term? How might effect of single biochar application last? That's again the question from Max. That's an excellent question. So some studies have looked into single versus multiple studies, and that's again there are not many literature out there. So recently we wrote a review paper that's still in press, and here we looked into single versus some multiple applications of biochar. So one study that I presented today, one finding was from Nebraska, where biochar was applied just one time about 6 years, and we measured some soil properties after 6 years, and we saw a negative priming effect. That is, the amount of carbon that applied nearly doubled after 6 years. So you can see some of the benefit with one-time application. Sometimes it might need multiple application depending on your soil type, environmental factor. Sometimes you'll have leaching. Sometimes your biochar might be disintegrated. So it depends. But one-time application might see effect, but it might take certain time to see those effects. So can you again define cation exchange capacity and explain greenhouse gas emission chart in more detail? So, Rubin, this presentation is being recorded, and this presentation will be posted in our website in about a week. So probably you can just look into the presentation again, look into those greenhouse gas. But just to briefly answer your question, so cation exchange capacity, so is the capacity of soil to exchange cation or hold nutrients. So if you have more cation exchange capacity, then you have more nutrients. And greenhouse gas emission, I was showing you graphs where we looked into carbon dioxide emission, nitrous oxide emissions, methane emissions. So we saw some effects like reduced nitrous oxide emission and increased carbon dioxide emission. Nitrous oxide emission also reduced due to denitrification processes. Methane emission was reduced with biochar application, and we saw some carbon dioxide emission during the time of flooding, and less carbon dioxide emission during fallow period, and again more carbon dioxide emission during rice season. But again, it was compared with different treatments, and in all of those treatments, biochar had reduced carbon dioxide emission. So are you able to speak to the idealistic application rate or biochar to inoculation substance ratio? So I'm not sure about this question, and to best of my understanding, if you are talking about the application rate, so this is something that has not been studied much. People have tried applying biochar at different rates, like 0%, 5%, 3%, or let's say 5 milligram per hectare, 6 milligram per hectare, 7 milligram per hectare. So I would say the ideal application rate depends upon your soil, upon your climate. So in most of the cases, in coast texture soil, we have seen a lot of benefits of biochar. So if you apply biochar at rate of 7 megagram per hectare, you will see a lot of benefits in these different soil properties in coast texture soil. And again, biochar application rate of about 30 ton per hectare was what one meta-analysis that was recently published explained for attaining this yield benefit. But again, if you're looking at certain soil properties, maybe more than 7 or 8 megagram per hectare is idealistic ratio. But there are studies that are showing that as you increase the rate of biochar application, there are beneficial effect on like reducing bulk density, increasing porosity. So it depends. It depends on soil texture, depends on climate. So can you explain how is biochar sustainable for agriculture use, even if we have to apply pyrolysis for an important amount of time? It's excellent question. So to answer this question, we definitely need studies that look into life cycle assessment, which we call LCA. So LCA can provide you how much carbon are we producing from different pyrolysis facilities. But to answer your question, biochar is a stable carbon. So when we apply biochar, it adds carbon into the soil. So this carbon can be stored into soil for short time, probably longer time than other forms of carbon. And this has beneficial effect on soil microorganism, beneficial effect on soil physical properties and chemical properties, on hydrological properties. And uh, and of course, this is very important for getting healthy soil for improving resilience of agriculture systems for reducing greenhouse gas emission. But again, having said that, we definitely need some LCA analysis to look into the pros and cons of biochar productions in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So are there any benefits to apply biochar on top of pasture without incorporation via tillage? Excellent question. This is again something that needs to be studied, but most of the studies that have been done on field or in greenhouse or in pot experiment, they have incorporated biochar into the soil. And when you have like mixing of biochar into the soil, it provides better benefits into the soil. But again, it depends on the depth you are applying versus if you are like broadcasting, for example, let's say fertilizer or compost that you usually broadcast. So it depends, but beneficial effects are apparent on mixing as well. But again, this is something that needs to be studied. Thank you for including potential harm that can be caused if biochar is not prioritized and stable. Can you speak to this? I saw a couple of studies from 2013 that spoke about how quickly poor biochar can break down and toxin detected in soil based on feed metal that were used. That is an excellent question, Michael. Yes, there are studies that are showing that there might be some harmful compounds, organic compounds that are produced during pyrolysis, phenolic compound that are produced during pyrolysis, and that could have serious health implications. Um, but this is really not my field of expertise, so I can't talk more about this. But biochar has shown a lot of positive effect on soil health, on reducing greenhouse gas emission. But there are definitely some challenges and gaps that need to be addressed. And one of the challenges is these harmful compounds that are produced during pyrolysis, and that definitely needs our attention. How many years should one conduct to make meaningful deduction from biochar studies in different? That's a great question. So there are studies that have done biochar studies for just 5 months, 6 months. There are studies that are looking into the effect of biochar for 10 years, 20 years. But I would say long-term monitoring of biochar effect is really important to make meaningful conclusions on the effect of biochar on soil properties, on soil health, on greenhouse gas emissions. So if you make conclusions just based on a couple of months of study, then I would say it won't be judicious. So try to look into long-term monitoring, large-scale application. Those are key points while making definitive conclusions on biochar. So there are studies, long-term studies that do suggest that more than 6 or 7 years of biochar application a beneficial effect on soil properties, soil health. How much per acre would you recommend applying and what is the cost? So depends. It depends. This is an excellent question. This is something that you should check with your local market or some sellers and biochar about the cost. But about the rate of biochar application, it depends upon your soil type. So have your soil first tested, and then also look into some of these different climate, different textures, and different rates that scientists or researchers have been applying. So in most of the coast texture soil, you will see beneficial effect at a rate as much as like 6 megagram per hectare. Can biochar improve soil nutrient holding capacity and can it react to some metals? Definitely, we talked about that in our presentation. You can definitely go back to our presentation once it's posted in our website. And yes, it does improve soil nutrient holding capacities. What is the recommended application rate and how often? So we already answered that question. So application rate varies from place to place, from soil texture, from climate, depending upon the biomass that you use for pyrolysis or the biochar that is produced from the feedstock. And how often depends. It could be single application, it could be multiple application. And there is so much variation in the type of biochar. Is the preferred commercial product that you are aware of? There are a lot of products that are available in market, so it depends. It depends on what you are interested on. So depend on the cost that you are uh, trying to get biochar. So it depends. But having said that, the application rate we talked before, some of the effects, beneficial effects, are seen at rate as much as 6-7 megagram per hectare, and could be one-time application, multiple time application. Can you describe the process to create biochar on a small scale, like for home garden? So this is an interesting question. So you'll find a lot of literature out there. So try to Google some of these different processes to create biochar. So the small homemade equipments are also being used to produce biochar. Sometimes it's very difficult to completely avoid oxygen in your local facility, in your local homemade facility. So it's produced by limiting oxygen or in limited oxygen conditions. So it's very hard, but some charcoal that you produce at your house can be used as an alternative to uh, biochar too. But there are different techniques to produce that. But you have to limit the oxygen supply to your facility to produce this biochar. Is biochar just another product to sell or buy? Is the speed and quantity of increasing carbon in the soil the main reason for incorporating it? Why not just grow it using regenerative agriculture? Excellent question. So I would say that biochar is one of the option among portfolios of option that is available. So it is a soil amendment. It can increase soil carbon. It can improve soil health. It can improve soil properties. It can improve physical properties, chemical properties, biochar properties, hydrological properties. So biochar is one of the options. You have cover crops there, you have tillage, you have conservation tillage, no tillage, reduced tillage, you have compost, you have livestock incubation. So there are different practices through which you can improve soil health or improve carbon. But biochar is one of the options among the portfolio options available out there. And it is because getting popularity because of its beneficial effect on soil carbon content, beneficial effect on reducing emissions. So home versus commercial production. I'm not an expert on this one, but again, having said that, at home you can definitely produce biochar using some locally available resources, but you have to limit oxygen supply to produce the biochar that we get commercially. But in commercial production, they have these big facilities, commercial facilities where you use different feedstock, and these feedstock are used in this facility at different temperature, and then you have different heating rates, and finally you produce different gas, solid, liquid components, and biochar. So biochar is one of the product that you get from these commercial facilities. So it's different from what we do in home. But there are a lot of literatures out there, and probably the best option would be to get into those literatures. Does biochar improve root intercession or suppress root diseases? That's an excellent question. There are some studies where different fungicide have been injected with biochar, along with biochar, and have seen beneficial effect, especially in orchid, in different fruit crops. So there are definitely some beneficial effect. And again, this is something that has not been studied, and this is outside my expertise too. But there are literature that do suggest beneficial effect on reducing some of these diseases. Are there research on application of char on forest floor? Yes, there are. Uh, does Rodel make it one biochar or process it? If you have processed, what parameters for the biochar do you specify? That's an excellent question. To best of my understanding, we don't have much information about biochar. Rodel is just stepping into some research on biochar, but I'm not I didn't have much information about that. So anything I would say, um, uh, could be incorrect. So I didn't want to answer that without definitely consulting with my team. But to best of my understanding, we don't make our biochar. We didn't have any preliminary data on biochar use from rural. But definitely, this is something we're excited to work on, and definitely we are looking for collaborators out there, and we'll definitely love to work with different folks who are working in biochar across different industries, universities. Does the process of creating biochar produce greenhouse gases? Yes, it does. So again, we need to look into um, some LCA analysis that I talked before. There are some greenhouse gas emission. There are also some organic compound that are produced during biochar production. But on a whole, biochar has beneficial effect in reducing greenhouse gas. Are there any studies on inoculating biochar with biological to improve nutrient cycling? I'm not aware of that, but that is something definitely you need to check. But biochar have been applied with different fungicides in different fruit crops. Is biochar an organic amendment or is it OMRI certified? How can I tell it's organic or not? Are there any tests to do at labs? So excellent question, Gladys. So biochar is an organic amendment. Is produced from organic material. It's a feedstock. Different feedstocks are used to produce biochar. So it's definitely an organic amendment. It's soil amendment that will improve soil properties. And there are biochar that are UMRI certified, and that are biochar that are used in organic research. These organic different research institutions that use biochar in the research projects use UMRI certified biochars. And but you won't find a lot of biochar out there. So if you just Google UMRI certified biochar, you'll find quite a few biochar out there, but not many biochar. And it's very hard unless it's UMRI certified to tell whether it's organic or it's not organic. So basically, it's made from organic material, so it's an organic amendment. But again, it has to be OMRI certified to be an organic biochar. Well, I think we have answered most of the question, and I would definitely love to hear from you. So if you have any further questions, uh, feel free to send me an email. So you have my email address over here. And it was great answering all these questions, and thank you for attending this webinar, and hope we can arrange some more webinar in coming days. And thank you once again for participating in this webinar, and thank you, and you all have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.